Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you back to another comic book call. And first, I'd like to apologize for the lack of recent uploads as of late, but that's mostly due to most of the LCSs in my area just drying up. Where every time I go in, they just seem to be having like the same inventory, and they haven't really been rotating their stock as of late. But I can also understand because the holidays are coming up and everybody's attention is just elsewhere. So, like, mostly I've just been taking the comic book hunting down to like just my spare time, and I haven't been going in hard as of late. So I've mostly been relying on used bookstores and wherever else I can find them. And first, I'd like to start off with actually a yard sale that was happening down the road from where I live, where apparently one of their kids was moving out, and he gave the parents their his permission to sell all his old stuff. And this is kind of comic related, but he happened to have a bunch of retro games, and I managed to find a X-Men Children of the Atom video game for the PlayStation 1. Like, it's actually in pretty good condition, and online this retails for anywhere from $40 to $50, and it can hit a pretty penny when it's complete in the box. But like those old Capcom fighting games with Marvel characters in them, like they've been really collectible as of late, considering what Disney has been doing with the license video game wise. And maybe one day I can pull up a whole collection of the old fighting games, but that might be impossible at this time. And first, I'd like to start off with this actual first comic book, Batman Beyond #4. The first appearance of Melanie Walker, aka 10, from the Royal Flush Gang. And I know that I've recently said that I'm not much of an online shopper, but I managed to hit up this secondary marketplace where it's kind of decent, but I don't think it has like that big of a fan base. So, like scouring on that website, like they actually had some pretty good deals, and I managed to pick this one up for $8. $5 for the actual book, and then $3 for shipping. And I'm gonna say like this is a really good, well conditioned book, like immaculate. Like, I'm not much of a grader, but I would say this is a 9.8 candidate. And like I've been telling everybody, the 90 books are getting harder to find. So anytime you can find them, just go ahead and snatch them up. And then this next one was mostly, well, these next two books are just a half price book pickup. Secret Origins #46, the first appearance of Arm Fall Off Boy. Like, I remember this book was hot for a second when the character list for the Suicide Squad movie came out, and this was hitting anywhere from 10 to 15, but nobody seems to really be talking about that anymore. And I this isn't in the best condition, but for $2, who can argue that? And then I managed to also find a Superman the Man of Steel #31, a DC Universe logo variant, and for $2, like, as of late, my main focus has been trying to hunt these DC Universe logo variants, but man, like on top of the LCSs drying up, like these books now are almost next to impossible to find. Now this one, we took a road trip last week, mostly just for the weekend, just to try and get away from stuff. And I recently discovered this new comic book shop that I've never been to, and man, this place is like really good in like inventory wise, cause like, you know, when you that feeling like when you first walk into a store you've never been to, so you're always eager to just dig through the box and see what you can find. Like, that's like the rush I got at this store because I've never been to it. But man, like their wall books, like their prices, man, that was like, oh, like, I understand you guys gotta make money and you're also competing with the online market, but can't y'all do a little bit better than that? However, I did manage to hit their short boxes, and I did find a decent selection. First, I hit up a Robin number 126, the first appearance of Stephanie Brown as Robin. Now, in the wild, this can be a hard to find book. Uh, and this is my fourth copy of this because I happened to pick up a couple when I took a trip down to Florida to visit my girlfriend's family for her birthday a couple years back. And I know most people tend to look to that Batgirl 12 as one of Stephanie Brown's key issues, but that's mostly like a cover. And I happen to like this one because she actually manages to bring up that Robin character just a little bit more and adds to her history. And I managed to pick that up for $3. Next up, the final issue of Superman Batman number 87. Now, this is one of those debated things about how rare the final issue of a series actually is. Like, this is really hard to find, but at the same time, it doesn't really go for much. So, like, anytime you hint into the is the last issue really valuable or not, like, I kind of tend to think that some are just more sought after than others. And this really can't be that rare since I've ran into a couple in the wild, and this is my second copy, but I only picked this one up because this was in really good condition. And next up, The Fury of Firestorm number 28, the first appearance of Slipknot. Now, I know when the first Suicide Squad movie hit, this book was hitting $20 to $30 easy, but if you read the comics and you watch the movies, you kind of understand why this book hit like a rock. Like, he was only in the movie for what, like 8 minutes before he died, and then he's just completely forgotten about. And you really haven't seen anything from this character in a bit, so like a minor key issue for $2, who's gonna argue that? Now with this next issue, it's kind of like a doozy. Showcase 96 number 3, the prototype for the Birds of Prey. Like, what's funny is that the comic book shop owner actually had the Oracle Black Canary Birds of Prey number 1 up on the wall, and he wanted $70 for it. But then I go through the long box and he just lets this sit there for $4. Like, yeah, the you could say what you want about the movie. Like, I saw it and I never have to watch it again, thankfully. But the comic books actually seem to be holding their value, considering like how when a movie comes out, if the movie is bad, the books, like the key issues related to it, seem to drop. But for some reason, when it comes to Birds of Prey, like, that's been maintaining its value. Oh, this has hit a bit of a dip because it used to go for 30, but you can just pick them up for half of that now. But I managed to pick mine up for $4. And this one was more like a cover grab, just because I'm trying to finish like the first mini run of the last Arkham and Batman Shadow of the Bat number 2. Like, I didn't find issue number 3, which happens to have the first appearance of a character that's going to end up on the Batwoman show. But the less talked about that show, the better, because, man. Well, on top of that, supposedly this is a first appearance of a character that just happens to be on that show. Batman number 540, the first appearance of Vesper Fairchild. Now, I kind of just like this issue just because the way it's composed with the Spectre and Batman getting sucked in there. But when it comes to the Batwoman related show, man, those books are at rock bottom prices right now, and for good reason. And I also happened to pick up from the New 52 Batman number 12 with all the Bluebird stuff going on. This is her origin and the first appearance of a character that's related to her. But like the New 52 Batman was like one of my favorite Batman runs, but it's been so long since I read it that I'm having trouble like remembering what actually happened in that. And the next, I happen to get Green Arrow number 101, the issue where he supposedly dies. Now, I know this one's more of a harder to find book, and I wasn't too happy about the price, but knowing that it is hard to find, I wouldn't mind paying $10 for it. But the thing is that he actually had 3 copies in there, and this one was the one that was in the most best condition available. But if you guys happen to watch my last video, you'll know that I kind of made like a big blunder where I happened to pick up a book, but what I thought was that it was falsely advertised, but what the seller was trying to say is that it's technically the second print, but it happened to be a DC Universe logo. And I thought it was the second print with the Roman numeral 2 that just happened to have the DC Universe logo. Now at this comic shop, they actually had it as a wall book for $25, but I managed to talk them down to 20. And it's actually the one I was looking for, Green Arrow or Green Lantern number 51, the DC Universe logo, but it also happens to be the second print, which this book is getting harder and harder to find. And supposedly this was a much harder book, mostly because the original printing had a higher printing rate than with the DC Universe logo, but this one it just happens to be fall under the super rare category. And like I only managed to pay 20 for this, but the reason it didn't have a sticker was like the price book, the 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 books on the wall came out. The prices were labeled on sticky notes. So I thought that was like an interesting concept because I've never seen that. Like most shops tend to label their top price books with a big sticker, and then they just label the first appearance of this or the death of that. And I'm actually glad I managed to find this one. Now for these next set of books, like this was totally unplanned from the start. Because right after we just got out of this comic book store, my girlfriend's Nintendo Switch was dying, so we had to rush to a local video game store to get a charger for it. And then we inputted a GPS for a local game store that was actually close by down the road from this place. But when we got there, we had a trouble finding it because, like when we got there, it kept saying, "Oh, your location is on the left." But we kept searching and searching. I'm like, "There's no store here. Are we lost, or is the GPS wrong?" And then what we realized is that the GPS wrong because the owner of the place on the GPS had claimed the business as his certain booth, but we didn't realize that the booth was inside of an antique mall, which was actually pretty interesting. Because we were planning to go to an electronics store, video game store, to pick up a charger, and we ended up walking into an antique mall. And like, I didn't even plan on buying comics there, but we just happened to drop by a booth that happened to have some comics. And these are the ones I managed to pick up. Batman and Robin Adventures Sub-Zero. I think this is either the adaptation or the prequel to the Sub-Zero movie, and I only managed to pay $2 for this one. And more of the 90s stuff, Batman and Robin Adventures number 7, a DC Universe logo variant. Now, I think a couple of videos ago I mentioned where I had made a trip to Dallas, and this was a store that knew what they had, and they had this book listed at their shop for $20 just because it was a variant. And then I managed to get this literally for pennies on the dollar for that. Next up, Batman Adventures number 18. Now, this one's a really sick cover. Like, supposedly this book has a DC Universe logo variant, but that's almost next to impossible to find. But man, having the DC Universe logo variant, like with this cover, that could be a big money book right there. And next up, Final Crisis number 3 with Supergirl on it. Like, I'm trying to collect most of the covers for this series just because, like, they're so damn beautiful. But unfortunately, this is the only one that they had, and they didn't have uh, the other ones containing the first Calvin, the Black Superman, which I was kind of bummed out on that one. And then lastly, I just happened to pick up another Brave New World, the 80-page special, the first appearance of Ryan Choi. And like this book just is holding steady at $15 with the Snyder cut coming soon. But yeah, guys, hopefully you guys found this interesting and keep posting those videos so that we can keep an eye out, and just peace out, y'all.